Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Joel, and today we'll be looking into JavaScript. Right, so JavaScript is very important for web application pen testers. We use it often. Something very common is the XSS cross-site scripting, right? And there are many other places as well. Like for example, if you want to steal a cookie, or if you want to modify a form, right? Or if you want to do a XHR, and many other places we use JavaScript. So this session is going to be kind of like a refresher, where we will go through the various important topics which are required uh, before you probably start pen testing, or maybe if you are into bug bounty programs and so on, right? Awesome. All right, so HTML, right? The markup language. HTML provides the layout, right, for a page or in a website. It provides the layout, whereas you would have heard about CSS. Now CSS provides the styles, right? The fonts, the colors, and so on. It basically decorates your page. Now the next important thing is the JavaScript, right? So JavaScript provides the interaction, okay, um, interaction with the browser, right? So generally JavaScript runs on the client side, right? Nowadays you have some very advanced implementations like Node.js, etc., where JavaScript also runs on the server side, right? But when it was in the earlier days, JavaScript was mainly used on the client side. Okay, and the JavaScript basically runs in the sandbox, inside the sandbox of a server, of a browser. So you have a browser where the client is trying to connect to the server, and the JavaScript basically runs on the browser. Okay, so now let's so this session, throughout the session, we will be doing a lot of hands-on. We will try some code, we will play around with it, and we'll try to refresh our knowledge about JavaScript. Okay, all right. So let's maybe open up a text editor. So I'm using a favorite text editor, which is Atom, right? Let me create a new file here, right? Let me save this file maybe on the desktop. Let me call this as demo.html. It's going to be a HTML file. All right. So you guys might know the basic syntax, right, of a HTML file. So how does it look? So you have the HTML tags, right? And then you have maybe let's put a head tag as well. Okay, right? So that's your head tags. Then you have your body, right? So where the major content goes in, right? So this is how a very simple template of of a web page looks like. Wonderful. Now JavaScript. So how does JavaScript look, right? So the JavaScript is always put inside the script tags. So let's put the script tags. There you go. We have the script tags, and let's write a very simple hello world JavaScript code now, right? Let's put an alert inside this. Alert. Let's say hello world. All right. Let's put a semicolon. Okay. So that is this. So that is your hello world JavaScript code, right? Now how do you run this? So let's save this. So in order to run this, you can run it inside any browser. So I have a Mozilla Firefox browser on the right side, so I'm gonna run inside this, right? So let me open this file. I have this file on my desktop, so probably I can open this up. Yeah, there you go, right? So the JavaScript got executed, and we got a hello world alert thrown out on my screen, right? We can try it once again. Let's refresh this, and there you go, right? So that was a very simple um, you know JavaScript code which we just now wrote. Now let's delve into something little more deeper in JavaScript, right? Okay, so we'll talk about variables. Okay, before that, let me give you a suggestion. I use this particular extension called as Firebug, right? It's a pretty handy extension where you can run your JavaScript code, and you can also do a lot of other things if you're into pen testing, bug bounty, and so on, right? So you can install this extension. It's an add-on which comes along with Firefox, and you can install it, and you can launch it by clicking on this small bug which appears on your screen, and you get a screen of this sort at the bottom, and where you can run your JavaScript, right? Now, yeah, let's go back. So we were talking about variables, right? Just like any other programming language, I think you probably would have tried Python or C and so on. You have variables. So similarly, you have variables in JavaScript as well, right? So you can have variables like numbers, right? You can have variables like strings, right? This is also valid. You can also have variables like boolean, right? So that's going to be true, right? So that's these are various kind of variables, right? Pretty much similar to most other programming languages. Let me remind you, JavaScript is a case sensitive language. So a variable with a capital B, such as this, would be different from the variable small b, because it's a case sensitive language. Next, we can talk about operators, right? Let's start with arithmetic operation. A very simple operator is your addition operator, right? So it will be something like let's do 50, b equals 50, and we can put an alert a plus b, and you can see the addition happening, right? So similarly, you can do subtraction, division, and so on. So you can do all the arithmetic operations. I think the next is your comparison operation. So we will later be using some of these comparator operations as well. Something like greater than or less than, greater than equal to, less than equal to, and so on. So these are your comparison operators. Assignment operator. So what we have done here is basically an assignment, right? We have assigned the value 100 of to a, so that's an assignment operation happening here. So after assignment, you also have logical operations, right? And, or, and so on, right? So this is the representation for logical operation. So this is your and your or looks like this. Sorry, yeah. So that's your or, right? So we will use them as well in our examples later. Something very interesting which I wanted to show you is this one, right? So let's do alert plus plus, or let's do a plus plus. What do you think the answer would be, right? We have a equals 100, and if you do alert a plus plus, you might think the answer is 101, but you will be surprised that the answer is 100. The reason being, the alert function, it uses the value first, it displays, and then it increments. So if you want a 101 to be printed, then you probably have to increment it, prior. So you do this, and then you get a 101, right? So small note which I wanted to put in there. So after operators, we can talk about conditionals, right? So some of very famous conditionals, you would have used them in other languages as well. So in JavaScript, we have two of them. The first one is your if-else statement, and the other one is your switch statement, right? So let's write a small code, right, with if-else, right? Let's call variable b is equal to 500, right? And let's do if b, right? Let's put this, if b is greater than 500, probably let's do an alert, right? Let's do an alert which says b is greater than 500, right? So yeah, so that's a if. Then if you have more statements, you can write an if else, right? So you can put b equals to 500, right? Then what we are going to do is, let's do an alert similar to the earlier one, right? Let's put this as equals. Do you want one more? Maybe we can put one more, else if, right? Let's put another else if b is less than 500, right? Then we are going to put a less than statement. Okay, I think there's a small mistake here. Let me put another equal to. Yeah, that looks good. So now if you run this, let's run this, and you can see, because b equals 500, we have this case, or this if else being executed. Let's change this to say 400, and you'll get b less than 500. So that's how the if else works, right? Pretty interesting. Awesome. Next we will see the switch statement, right? Let's write a very simple switch statement. Let's start with the variable name equal to Tom, right? And switch, we could use that name over here, and let's open our switch statement. So case, we have to use the keyword case. Let's use Tom, right? And let's use alert. Let's use an alert here. Let's alert it to be Tom. Then we gotta break it, right? This is pretty important. I will tell you why you have to do that. Let's probably put another case statement, right? Let's maybe put it as Jack, and then probably let's put a default statement at the end. So default, let's alert maybe unknown. Wonderful. Let's close the switch statement. Okay, so let's run this. Great. Because the name was Tom, we got this case to be executed. Now let's change this to Jack. There you go, we got Jack printed, right? Let's put this to Jerry, right? And we'll get the unknown printed, default, right? So if any of the case matches, right, we will have that particular case getting executed. If nothing matches, we will have the default execution happening. Now the break here basically tells the switch statement that you have to execute only this case, and then you break out of the loop, right? Now let's do something by removing this particular break, right? And let's put it as Jack. So what happens? Let's run this. So we have Jack printed as usual, and then we will have unknown also printed, because we don't have a break statement, and this case will be executed. Followed by that, we will also have the default case executing. That's why we use the break statement. So that was the conditionals. We talked about if else and switch. Now let's move on to the loops. Loops are pretty interesting, right? If you want to do something repetitively, then we can use a loop statement. Okay, maybe we could do this on our demo HTML page which we created earlier, right? So we have our skeleton code here, right, which we'll use for the rest of the session. Let's do something. Let's do a variable. Let's put it as counter equals, let's say 100. All right, now this is how you write your while loop. While we put the condition for the while to execute. We say when the counter is greater than 0, if the counter is greater than 0, then execute, right? Execute this particular, whatever is there inside this, you gotta execute it, right? So what will we do? We will write something like document dot write, document dot write, right? So we are basically writing it back to the HTML page, right? So this is like a function which you can use inside JavaScript if you want to write something back to the page, right? So maybe we will put a p tag which you use in HTML, right? Let's write it as counter value is, all right, and that's done. We'll put a plus, we'll put a counter, right? That's good, and we will close the tag. All right, this should work. Great. Let's save this and let's refresh this. I missed out, decrementing the counter here. Let's do that. Counter minus minus. So what happens inside this while loop? We will have the counter value written to the page, and inside every loop, inside every iteration, we are going to decrement the counter, and that's basically getting executed down here, right? So yeah, let's run our demo page, right? So maybe let's pull the demo page. I think it's on my desktop. Yeah. So as you see on the screen, we have the counter value written beautifully on the screen. So that was the while loop. So we were able to do this. We were able to write 100 different lines to the page by just using 2 lines of code. All right. Now let's move to the next loop, which is your for loop, right? So we will again retain our skeleton. Let's just remove this piece. Let's do variable counter, right? You can actually do all of this while I type it on the screen, so that you get a pretty good hands-on as well. So let's do counter 200, right? Counter maybe it should be greater than 0, and we go and decrement the counter minus minus. Wonderful. Now we will also do a document dot write, which we did earlier, and we're gonna do, I shouldn't have removed it earlier, it's basically the same, so I should have kept it anyway. Counter value is, let's move this, and let's write the counter value. All right, let's put a plus, and let's close the tag. Let's close the p tag. Wonderful. That looks good. I think so. And obviously we have to decrement the counter. Okay, let's put a semicolon, and yeah, that's pretty much it, right? Great. So we have written a for loop, and this for loop is going to print 200 times, right, to the screen. Right, let's save this and let's refresh this. Wonderful. So you can see the counter value has started from 200, and it goes all the way right to down. So that was while loop and for loop. All right, the next is okay, so let's move towards functions. Okay, functions are pretty interesting. So I'm pretty sure you would have seen, or you would have used functions in other programming languages. So we'll see how do we write functions here. So functions are written to do a specific task, and then you can call these functions repeatedly. That way you can reduce the size of your code and make it more and more modular, right? So let's write a very simple function. So this is the syntax. So we write the keyword followed by the name of the function. All right, and what do we do next? We write the code which goes inside the function, which is, let's call this as JavaScript for Pentesters. Wonderful. All right, and once you have written the function, you have to call the function. So we will call the alert function which we just now wrote. So we call it this way, right? So let's save this and let's refresh the page. There you go. We got the alert, displayed, which means our call alert function was called. So this is how we write a function. Okay. Now probably we'll write a function where we can pass some parameters, right? Let's change the function to, let's say, add numbers, right? And instead of just putting in an alert, instead of just putting a static alert, let's do an addition, right? Let's do a plus b, which means we need to pass a couple of parameters here, which is a and b. All right, and just like how we did earlier, let's call this particular function and let's pass values. Let's pass 2 and 5, right? So what we are doing, we have defined a function add numbers and we are passing the numbers 2 and 5, which means this function should add 2 and 5 and display 7, right? Okay, so let's save that and let's refresh this. There you go, we got 7 printed as well. Now the next is we also have an option to return values, right? So how do we return values? What we could do is, let's retain the same function name. Let's slightly change this. Instead of doing an alert over here, let's do sum is equal to a plus b and let's return sum, right? And you're calling the add numbers, wonderful, and let's put a alert down here. I think that should work for us. Okay, so now what happens, the function is called, it's executed, and the value computed is returned back to the alert function, and the alert is again going to display 7, right? Or if you want, maybe we can change the 2 to 4, which means we should get 9 printed on the screen, right? So let's do that. Yeah, there you go, we have 9 thrown on the screen. So that's how you write functions in JavaScript. All right. Yeah, so okay, maybe we will also touch upon variables, right? So the variables which are defined inside a function, they are basically local to the function. But in JavaScript, you can also define global variables, which means I can come down here and I can define variable a is equal to 100, and you can define, or you can use this um, variable a, right, anywhere throughout your code, right? And this particular variable, it has a global scope, right? But whatever you define inside, they are going to have a local scope, right? Yeah, so you can use that concept when you write your functions. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think the next thing which we will talk about is the data types, right? So data types, we have talked about numbers, right? We also have strings, which are data types, boolean, right, the true and false value. So that's pretty common as well. Arrays, okay, so arrays are pretty interesting. So let's see, how do you define arrays? So there are many ways of defining arrays. So for example, I can do it like this: variable, let's call it as demo, right? I could do something like this: apple, and I could do something like mango, right? So there you go. So that's like a variable. That's an array. So you can define the array in this way, right? You can also define array using a new operator, new, right, array, and you can do the same thing what I did here inside. Sorry. There you go. So even this works, right? This is also pretty much valid. The other way of doing it is, I would say, you can do demo is equal to new array, right, this way, and then you can go to the next line and you can say demo of 0 equals to whatever you want, apple in this case. Great, right? So you can do this as well. You can do demo of 1 equals mango. So there are many ways of defining arrays. So these are like 3 different ways, right, where you can define arrays. So arrays, as you know, it's a collection of variables. Okay. Moving on, so that was pretty much it, right? Next we will look into a little serious topic. It's called objects, right? If you are coming from a OOPS background, right, in Java and so on, you would have seen objects. You would have already used objects. Objects are basically again data types wherein you have some methods associated with some data as well. So in objects, in JavaScript we have objects, and inside the objects we can have two things. We can have properties and we can have methods, right? And you need not define classes here, right? Just like JavaScript or just like Java, you need not define classes. um, and yeah, let's do an example. Probably that will help us understand. So how do we define a object, right? Let's do function. Okay, let's do function. Let's call this function as vulnerable, right? Right. And let's give two parameters maybe, right? One is your description and the other one is your CV ID, right? And inside this we are going to use the this operator. So when you're doing a this, it basically references to that particular object, right? So you're basically referencing to this, to the object of this vulnerable. So you're saying this basically refers to vulnerable. So you're saying this dot description is equal to description, and probably let's do this dot CV ID equals to CV ID. Wonderful, right? Now how do you create an object for this? So you will have something like variable, sorry, maybe you can create one, right? And you can use a new operator, and you use the name what you used here. We're going to use it as, we're going to call vulnerable, and we're going to pass parameters, right? Accessors. Okay, accessors is a description of the vulnerability, and the CV ID, right? We can give it as 1 2 3 4. Great. So let's use a semicolon, and yeah, that's it. So we have defined object one, and this object is going to have two properties, which is the description and the CV ID, and you have passed them as well over here, right? Now how do you access this? Now how do you access the properties, right? We can access the properties using the object name, which is one in this case, dot description. So we're going to use the dot operator for doing that, right? That's it. So maybe let's try this. Let's refresh our page here. There you go. We got the description printed. The description of this vulnerability was XSS, and we got printed, right? We can change this to CV ID, and let's save this and refresh. Yeah, there you go. We got the CV ID printed as well. So we use a new keyword to create an object. So that's something, a takeaway we need to have from that. Now what we have done in this is we have just created properties for the object. How do you create a method for the object? So for that, let's create a method. So we will call this method. Let's go here. This dot let's call this alert vulnerability details. All right. Then we use function, and there you go. Right, and this is the syntax. So this is the function, or this is the method, which is going to be bound to this object, right? And in the method, let's put something. Let's put it as, let's do this dot description, and let's put a plus, right? Let's put this, and probably let's also put let's put some space here. Great. Then let's put this dot CV ID. Wonderful, right? And let's remove this alert, and let's probably call the new function which we created, right? So how do you call the new method which you have created inside the object? You can call using the object name dot alert vulnerability details. Let's check if this works, right? put a semicolon here. Yep, I think that's pretty good. Let's see if it works. There you go. So we got the description and the CV ID printed on the screen, and this got printed by the object which is bound by the method which is bound to the object. So now our object vulnerable, has properties, two properties, and it also has a method, right? So yeah, that was pretty much it. Oh, okay, there's one more thing. You can also create the object method outside, outside um, the definition of the object. So you can do that outside. So how would we do that? Let's remove this. So we use keyword called prototype in that case, right? So let's call the object which is vulnerable, right? Dot, we use the keyword prototype, right? And then we use the name of the method which we want to create. Let's call this is vulnerable. Sorry, let's put this equals, let's put a function here, right? So this syntax is almost same as what we did here, right? The method which we created inside this. Okay, so we could do this and probably put an alert inside this. For now we could do something like excesses. Does this look good? Yep. So now this if you want me to go through this again, vulnerable here is basically maps to the key, the vulnerable which is present here, right? And then prototype is your keyword, and is vulnerable is the function which you, or is the method which you created just now, right? Let's save this. Let's run this, right? I think there is a syntax issue somewhere. Okay, we haven't called this, so that's why we did not get anything printed, right? So let's call this vulnerable one dot, we have to call this particular method which you created just now. Perfect, that looks good. Now it should work. There you go, we got excesses printed. So that's all about methods, and that's all about objects, my bad, right? So that's how you create objects, that's how you create the properties, you create the methods, how you access your objects. Yeah, maybe we can go one step ahead and we can also see how do you enumerate object properties, right? So there are many ways to do that. Let me start by using let's do the foreign operation, right? Let's remove this for now, probably not need it, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to use the foreign operation. So we can do something like for properties in vulnerable one, which is your object, right? And let's go here and let's create alert. Let's put an alert with prop, right? And plus, what do you want? Vulnerability 1 and the property associated with that, right? So this is for iterating through all the properties of an object, right? Currently we have these to be the properties, and let's see how this would appear, right? Let's save this, let's run this. So there you go, the first property, which is your description, right, which is your excesses, it's alerted. Then we have CV ID also thrown onto the screen because it's the second property. And then you also have your method, which is present as part of the object, also thrown onto the screen, right? Great. So that's how you iterate, right? The next way of iterating is, there are three ways to iterate. That was one way. The other way is you can use an alert. You can use a keyword like object. Okay, this has to be a caps. Object dot keys. Sorry, let's use the small keys. And then you use keyword 1 1, right? this should do pretty much the same. Let's run this. Yeah, there you go. So we have an alert with the description, CVID, and the method. So all the keys are basically thrown onto the screen. Okay. The other way of iteration is we could remove this, and we can actually we could remove the keys, and we can do get on property names, right? This should work as well. Let's see, let's run this. There you go. We have description, CVID, alert, and vulnerability details printed. So yeah, these are the three ways of enumerating the object properties. So that's all about objects, right? Now we'll talk about DOM, right? DOM is actually very useful when you are pen testing. DOM stands for Document Object Model. I would say DOM is more like an API that helps you manipulate the HTML and XML of the page using, say JavaScript in this case, right? So let's say there is something already, rendered as part of HTML. Using DOM inside your JavaScript, you can actually go and modify, that HTML or the XML, right? That way you can cause some, kind of an attack, right? Your injection attacks, right? So yeah, let's get into that. Like, let's get back to our template here. Yeah, this is our template. Let's try something. Let's what do we do here? Let's see how we can use DOM to maybe get some element. Okay, get some element from the HTML page, right? But we'll be doing this inside the script. So yeah, let's do this. So first we are going to create an element. Let's create a h1 tag, right? Pretty much common, right? A h1 tag. Let's give an ID to the h1 tag. Let's call this probably title, right? Wonderful. So we have title. What do we do next? Next we will go and give a title. Let's call this as welcome. Wonderful. And we are going to close the h1 tag. Awesome. Now we have our script tag, right? So what we are going to do in script tag is let's go and fetch. Let's call this as variable 1 equals document. Basically refers to the HTML page we are on. Get element by ID. So this is the function which we are going to use. So get element by ID. So this is a DOM, using the DOM. This is how you access, right, the document. So you say document dot get element by ID, and the ID we know is basically title. So now we have obtained, the ID. Okay. Let's do variable 1 dot inner HTML, right, equals accesses for pen testing. Okay, what did we do here? We actually we are basically modifying the title from welcome to accesses for pen testing. Now if you actually want to see this happening, what we could do is we can put an alert here. Let's put an alert. Let's put it as a break statement. Maybe that will help, right? Yeah, that looks good. Now let's see how this plays out here. Okay, so as you see on the screen, first we have the welcome printed because we are actually creating an ID called welcome. We are actually creating a h1 tag. So the HTML rendered is displaying it as welcome. Great. Then we also have the alert break being shown, right? So we know that the script has executed till here. Now as soon as I hit a OK over here, what happens is the welcome title over here changes, right? So watch it carefully. It changes to something different. It basically changes to accesses for pen testing. There you go, right? So that's what we did just now. We modified the h1 tag, right? and we were able to do that inside the script, and that's how you XSS can cause injection. The XSS injection can modify the DOM factors, can modify the underlying HTML using this method, right? Yeah, so let's try some more functions. Let's do something different. Let's put a couple of more tags, right? Let's put couple of h2 tags. Let's change this to h2, right? Let's change this to h2 tags. And what do we put inside h2? Let's remove all of this. Let's just do this is the first tag, right? And let's put this here. This is the second tag. Wonderful, looks good. h1, h2, h2, right? So we have two h2 tags. Beautiful. Now let's remove this, and let's change this, right? Let's create a new variable inside our script. Let's call this as h2 tags equals. Let's go back to how do we access DOM document dot. We'll use a different function here. It's called get elements by tag name, and the tag name basically is going to be h2. Okay, and we can see here we can print basically all the h2 tags. h2 tags. Let's print the length probably. Let's print the length of the h2 tags. How many h2 tags? So in this case we should get the answer to be 2. There you go, we have 2, right? Now maybe let's go and modify one of the h2 tag. Can we do that? Yeah, h2 tags. Let's maybe put a 1 here. Inner HTML. I think it's HTML caps, right? Let's modify it. What do we modify it to? Let's put something interesting. Let's put may the force you, right? Great. So let's see if that happens. Okay, this should work. Does it work? Let's see. h2 tags. Have I missed out on any kind of let's see, this might work. I think there was a syntax issue. Okay, I think I have not closed this alert. Put a semicolon here. Okay, let's see if, okay, so put a semicolon here. Yeah, so yeah, this was the alert, and after that, yeah, there you go. So we got the h2, one of the h2 tags, and we have changed it to, right, may the force be with you. Okay, does that make sense? We have modified one of the h2 tag. Great. Yeah, so what else? What do we do next? Maybe we can iterate. We can use a for loop to iterate through the tags, right? Let's see if that works, right? Let's probably remove this. Let's do for let's use a for loop for I equals 0. Let's do I less than h2, basically this, right? I want to iterate less than this thing, and then we do a I plus plus. Okay, alert, and h2 tags, right? Let's use the I operator and dot inner HTML. Looks good. Wonderful. Okay, so I think there's a small mistake earlier. I had missed out this tag, right? The h2 tag. I had not closed the h2 tag. I've rectified that now. So yeah, I think now it should work. Let's press this. Yeah, there you go. So you have this alert followed by the first tag, which is printed because of the for loop, and the second tag, which is printed because of the for loop, right? So that's how you iterate through the elements of your HTML as well. So you can use all of these concepts while building your exploit XSS. And uh, finding an XSS might be easy, but then you know building a very strong exploit using JavaScript to make a POC out of it is something very important, and that's where all of this would come handy, right? Now we are going to look at a very interesting topic, one of my favorite. It's called event handlers, right? So event handlers, developers use event handlers. Uh, for example, if the user is running his or her mouse, on the screen, or is clicking on something, and you want a particular event to be executed as a result of that, right? So we use event handlers in that case. Okay, so let's say you are hovering your mouse on a particular element and you want the alert box to be shown, and so on, right? So yeah, let's again go back and do a very quick let's actually see what is an event handler, right? Let's remove the script. Okay, let's keep only the h1 tag, right? Let's call this probably id as js. Okay, and we have the welcome displayed. Okay, let that be there, but let's put a event handler here. Let's put on click, right? On click, we are going to put an event handler which is alert. Okay, looks good. And inside this we're going to print something. We're going to print on click and blur, right? Looks decent. So let's see how this would show up. Okay, so you wouldn't know this until I take my mouse and I click. So I'm on welcome, I'm gonna click, there you go. When I clicked on h1 tag, right, we got the event handler which got executed, and we got an alert thrown on the screen, right? Beautiful. So that was an event handler. Now how do you play with event handlers inside your JavaScript? So that's something which we are going to do now. Let's remove this. Let's remove this. Okay, so we have the script here. What do we do inside the script? Let's do a get element by id like we did earlier. In our case the id is js, right? Let's do on mouse I think it's over, that's a function name. And this is the syntax, right? We do a mouse. Okay, and the function is going to be, we are going to have, let's print something, alert on mouse over. Okay, so now what did we do just now is we added event handler for the same element, but we added the event handler inside the script, right? So maybe we can do this on mouse over from the script. Let's say this from the script. I save this and I run this, right? So I used a different handler this time. It wasn't on click, I used on mouse over. So when I hover my mouse here, you can see it once again. When I hover my mouse on this element, you can see um, that the event is getting executed. And watch carefully, we wrote this event within JavaScript, right? Now we can also do another way, right? So we looked at two different ways of creating event handlers already. The third way would be by adding a let's do this, by adding a event listener. So that's pretty handy as well. I have used this in some of my accesses. So generally, XSS filters, they use blacklist some of the keywords. So you can actually if one of the event handler is not working, let's say on click is not working, you can probably go and check with on mouse over, or and so on. So you can try, you can look at the Mozilla's documentation and you can get a list of all the event handlers and try one after the other until you hit a XSS, right? Okay, so let's use a click handler now, and let's use the function. Okay, I shouldn't close this. Wonderful, and use this. Let's add listener. Does this look good? I think I have to, yeah. Let's do this alert. Handler. Close this. Yeah, that's fine. And we also need to have a false mention here. The function. I think that should work. Let's see if this works. Yeah. So when I click on the element, I get a handler which says click handler, right? That's because we have put the same alert inside over here. So yeah, so we looked at three different ways of, you know, playing with event handlers. The first way being injecting the event handler as part of as an HTML tag, right? We used it within the HTML. Then the second is we used something like, you know, on mouse over, which we did inside the script. The third one, we added event listener, right? So this listens to the event, and when someone clicks on it, right, we get a alert. So that was all about, you know, event handlers. Now this is a very next topic is very interesting. Again, we are going to do cookies, right? Cookies. Yeah, so for doing cookies, probably let's actually start a very simple HTTP server. Let's do that. You know, here I think you guys probably have Python on your laptops or computers. You can simply run this default program. You know, it's a simple HTTP server, right? This should work. So let's run this. There you go. We have a HTTP server now running on our port, on our local host on port 8000. Okay, great. So cookies, what do we do here? What we are going to do now is we are going to try to play with cookies but using JavaScript, right? Again, very useful while doing XSS, right? If you found a XSS vulnerability, then you can probably steal the cookies, right? You can send the cookies, you can modify the cookies, you can probably delete the cookies, and so on. You can do a lot of things. So let's see one of everyone, you know, let's see all of that one by one now. To start with, let's go and delete the things which are there in our script. Let's start with document.cookie, right? That's how you access the cookie. And so what we did here, maybe I did not explain. So we created a very simple HTTP server because you know, we don't want any complex functionality. We just need to have a HTTP server which takes a very basic get and post request, right? So we did that, and now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a cookie, right? This is creating a cookie obviously is not required if you're attacking a website, because there will obviously be cookie over there. You need not do this step in that case. Now since I have a very basic HTTP server without any cookie and stuff, I'm actually creating a cookie manually over here. So I'm going to call this cookie as session ID, maybe, right? A very common, and I'm going to give some huge number, right? So that's how your session IDs are generally, right? Let's put a semicolon, and let's close this, right? So we created a cookie. Now let's see if you know, our cookie can be displayed, right? Document.cookie, right? Let's see if this works. So what we did just now, we created a cookie manually, obviously not required if you are pen testing a real website, because there'll be cookie already there. In this case, we created one, and we have also started our um, HTTP server on the local host, and we are going to try to display our cookie. Right, let's refresh. There you go, we got our cookie displayed here. Looks good. Great. Now let's do a little more damage. Right, let's see if we can modify the cookie, or I mean, let's see if we can add something to the cookie. Right, so let's see if we can do that. It's going to be document dot cookie equals, let's add, because when you see a cookie there won't be just one field, generally you have many fields. So you have user ID equals 999 equals this thing. Good. And let's probably print that as well. Okay, save, and we are going to run this. So we have the first alert, and there you go, we have the second alert, and the second alert basically has the first cookie and the second cookie, which we set, and it's displayed. Great. What can we do next? Maybe we can see how to iterate through all the cookies, right? To iterate through all the cookies, what we'll do is probably we will create a variable called cookies. Right, let's do that, and document dot cookie. Right, let's split it. Let's split using the split operator. Okay, now we use a for loop, variable I equals 0. Right, and we're going to use I less than cookies dot length cth, and we do I plus plus. Right, that's how you write a for loop, and let's iterate through them. Right, let's do an alert cookies. Looks good. Yep. Yeah, let's see if this works. There you go. So okay, this alert was because of the first two alert boxes. Right, so these two you can ignore. Right, okay, let's probably comment this out, otherwise we will not get what we were looking for. Right, so we have okay, sorry, this should have been semicolon. Wonderful. So let's try this again. So I think I had spelled the word length wrong, so I corrected that. Let's save this, and it should run now. There you go. So I'm iterating through the cookies. So the first cookie is shown, the second cookie is shown, and that's how you can iterate through the various cookies. Great. What damage can you cause next? Can you modify the cookies? Yes, we surely can. So let's do that. Like, let's remove this. Let's probably modify the cookie. So we'll do document dot cookie equals, let's modify this cookie now. So we are gonna do this, and let's change this to some number, which is some negative number, right? And let's see if the cookie has changed. Alert document dot cookie. Wonderful. Great. So refresh this. So we have changed the cookie successfully. It's no more the big number, it's basically minus 1 2 3 4 as we have changed now. So that's how you can modify the cookie, right? Let's see if we can delete a cookie. That's interesting, right? So how do we delete? So let's go back and let's use this. Let's do document dot cookie, okay, equals, let's do this. Okay, so what we'll do is we have to delete, so let's remove that, and let's put a clause saying that this cookie expires, and let's put a very old date. This is 2018, but let's put maybe like 2014. Right, let's put Friday 24th Jan, right? Maybe 2014, and let's put midnight GMT, right? By doing this, what we are telling is, okay, let's do that. Let's do this, Control C. Let's print the cookie again here. Okay, so by doing this, we are basically, expiring the cookie pretty early, right? Right, so we have done that. So let's see. So we will have two alerts now. The first alert should show the cookie, and the second alert should not show the cookie because it's been expired, right? The session ID is what I mean. All right, so let's see if we refresh this. There you go. The first alert does show me both the cookies. The second alert shows me only one cookie because the first cookie has been expired, right? So that's how you can delete cookies. Now comes very interesting. What do we do if you want to steal cookies, right? How do you steal? So if you want to steal cookie, let's remove rest. Let's remove all of these. Okay, let's remove so much. Let's see how we can steal. So now we'll be basically using the server which we have created here, right? So this is basically how attacking server would look like. So attacker would have a server in some part of the world, and he will be able to send the cookies, right, of the victim, right, who is affected by excesses and so on. So when the victim accesses a particular website, his cookies will be sent to the attacker's server, and he can impersonate the victim and cause havoc, right? So how do we do that? We can do document. There are like many ways of doing this. Let's try the first one, which is document.location equals HTTP. In my case, my server is the local host. You can change this to local host. You can change this to whichever server you are interested in, right? Let's say 8000. Put a question mark here. That looks good. Plus document dot cookie, right? Is that right? Yep, looks good. Let's save this. Let's save this and let's see if this works. So let me recap. We have set up a cookie, and our intention is to send this cookie to our server, which is here, right? Let's see if that works. So the victim lands on our page, okay, and there you go. The server, the attacking server, has actually received the cookie of the user. Now using this, he can actually impersonate the user, right, and cause havoc in the network, cause havoc in the victim's profile, right? Now what you saw here, as you see, when the user clicked on the website, it basically the URL basically changed and he landed on a different page. Now if he's a very smart person, he might quickly understand that he has been redirected to some other website. He has been redirected to the attacker's website, and he might be alerted, right? So what we can do to sneak behind this is, right, we can do something like this, right? Let's do that. Let's remove this location. Okay, instead of location, let's do document.write, right? Let's write that. Let's write an image. Let's write an image to the screen. Let's see if that works. Okay, so how do we write an image? We know the image tag, right? This is the image tag, and we're gonna use this. Okay, so let's probably remove this. Okay, I'll explain to you what I'm doing once I finish typing. I think this should work. Maybe, I'm not sure. Does this work? Did I miss out on any? Maybe this one. Let's see. Okay, this looks good. So what I've done now is, as we saw earlier, we can use document.write to write back to the page, right? So the page being, in our case, the demo dot, let's go back to the page. Okay, let's go back to the page. This is my page, right? Okay, so yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm actually writing an image, right? I'm writing an image to the page, and the image, the source attribute of the image, I'm disguising the attacker's website, and I'm sending the cookie as well. So right, the browser will try to load the image from this URL, but obviously there is no image here. It's the attacker's website, so a GET request will be sent to the attacker with my cookie. Okay, so let's refresh this and you will be able to see. So you see there is a small image icon here, and my attacker's website has got the session ID and the cookies, from the victim. Now this, if the victim is alert, or if he is careful, he might see that there's something very weird happening here, right? Now how do you get past this? You can probably you can actually get past this. So what you can do is you can put height and width attribute. You can put height equals 1. You can also put width equals 1. So if you put a unit of that sort, what happens is, let's save this. Boom. So we have removed the image over here. So the alert, so the victim will not even know that he has been hacked. And you can see my attacking server actually getting all the session ID from the victim. So there are different ways of doing that, right? These are some of the ways which I showed you, and this is how you can steal cookies, right, from the victim, right? So I think we have covered almost everything in cookies, right? So we saw how to set cookies, we saw how to modify them, delete them, then we also saw how to steal cookies. Okay, beautiful. Next we will see a very interesting topic called as form manipulation. Again, this is like very useful for pen testers, right? So we are going to do that. Form manipulation, great. So for doing form manipulation, let me actually pull up a simple form which I have already written, right? Let's basically let me pull that up. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so let's just remove this and put this. So this is my form, right? Let's remove everything inside my script for now. Let me show you how the form looks, right? Let's save this, and there you go. So this is a very simple form, right, where we have the username, password, and you submit with the submit button, right? You can see here form, right? You have username, password, and you have a submit button. Great. So what do we do here? Let's start something simple, right? Let's see. Okay, let's intercept the form. That's interesting. Let's intercept the form. Can we do that? So we have the script tag here. Let's write a function. Okay, let's write a function called intercept form, right? And let's return false here. I want you to carefully notice, right? This is very important. I'm returning false, right? Now test being, we have done this earlier, right? We you can either do document.getID and put the test over there, or you can directly access this form using the ID test dot, and we know this particular form has a submit button, so we can do on submit, right? We have done this in event handling earlier. Equals, let's call this function. Okay, does that look good? Yeah. So what happens now? So let's like refresh this. Okay, now let's put username test, let's put password as well as test, and you submit this. Nothing happens, right? The reason being, when I submitted, this particular function got called, but the function returned a false. As a result, nothing actually happened. The request was not actually sent to the server. Okay, now if you change it to true, right, let's see what happens. Save this, let's refresh this, and now send test. There you go, something happened. I mean, the URL, the browser tried searching for a URL slash authenticate, because that's what I have mentioned in the form, but this is a very simple HTTP server which I have set up here, which doesn't have slash authenticate, so it just gave me an error response. But again, at least something happened. The reason being, the function returned true, and when the function returned true, only then the request was sent, right? So in the earlier case, what we saw was we were able to intercept. When you had a false mentioned over here, the request was not actually sent to the server, right? So what you can do is, if you're trying to intercept a form, you can write your malicious code here, probably send those credentials to your server, and that way you can get access to the victim's username and password, and then the victim would not even know. The victim would think he probably lost his internet connection, and he would go and type it once again, and you know uh, right, so that way you can steal the username and password. So that's intercepting of forms, right? Now let's see some easy ways to read and modify values. There are two ways to read the values inside a form, right? So since we are going to do since we are going to like intercept, let's do false here, right? And let's see if we can read. How do we read? Document dot forms, right? Test. Test because the ID is test, the form ID is test. We are going to get user name dot value. Wonderful. Does that look good? We have alert document dot forms. We are addressing the form test, username dot value, return false, right? So what will this do? Let's go back, let's do that. So let's refresh this test. There you go, we were able to print the username of the user who had logged in, right, using the script. All right, so that is a way of reading. The second way we could read is you know we could, if we don't know the ID of the form, you can do something like forms of 0, and you can access using elements of 1, right? Let's save this, and let's refresh this test, and non-matching URL. Okay, I think there was an issue. Did we miss out on some? Okay, yeah, there should be a dot over here. Okay, let's go back, let's refresh test. Yeah, this also does the same thing. We were able to intercept the form and read. I mean, currently I'm just printing it as an alert, but if you are an attacker, you can probably write a code over here like we did earlier, where we stole the cookies. Similarly, here you can write a code to send the username and password to your server, right? So there were like two ways to read the values inside the form. Next, what we could do is we could modify. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to modify the form values. I'll show you how we can modify, right? So what we'll do is we'll take this statement. This is basically how you read the form value, right, which the victim has inserted. Now we are going to modify. So let's change the username to Jacob, right, and see if this works. This has to be false, my bad. We're using this false because what we are having is a very limited, we're having a very basic server and we don't have a big application to traverse to, so we don't want our request to be sent. We want just to see how we can intercept the form. But in a real scenario where you have a actual server and you want the form submission to happen, then we will actually change this return statement from false to true, right? So yeah, for now let's keep it as false and let's see if this works, right? Let's refresh this, right, and let's run this. So we see the username is test, but as soon as you submit, the username changes to Jacob. So clearly means that we were able to change the username. We were able to modify the form values. Now maybe let's comment out this and see how we can, the last part of this exercise would be to send the credentials to our attacking server, which is here, right? We have a very nice attacking server here, very simple server, the local host. So we will see how we can do that. So for that we will have to just do a document, right? Document dot forms, let's use 0 dot action, and we will use http localhost, because we have our attacking server on our local host, right? Let's use the port 8000. So what should this do, right? As soon as we submit button over here, the username and password should be sent to our attacking server, right? Let's see if that works. Let's refresh this. Let's probably use test. The password also has test, and let's see if this works. Submit, right? Let's see. Okay, so why didn't that happen is because the request actually didn't go through, because we have mentioned it as false over here. Since we were testing how do we read values and how do we modify values, but now we want the request to be actually posted to the server, so we will change this to true, right, so that the request actually goes through. Now we will do a submit. Okay, maybe let's refresh it. Submit, and there you go, right? We have the username and the password was sent to my attacking server. Right now, if I was an actual attacker, I can actually use the username and password to log into the application and impersonate the victim, right? So that's what we did. We played with the forms, we intercepted the forms, we learned how to read, modify, and we also learned how to post the credentials to the attacking server, right? So that was basically form handling. What do we do next? I think the last part which is left is probably parsing, right? Parsing is actually very interesting. So we can do HTML parsing, JSON parsing, XML parsing, right? Why do we parse? Um, we could parse to extract, I mean, during an attack, right? Let's imagine a scenario where we have a website with which is vulnerable to accesses, and we are crafting our exploit right now, right? We are trying to build a POC which would show the which would show the actual havoc which the accesses can cause. And for doing that, let's say our exploit, for preparing our exploit, we want to traverse through the application, right, to fetch the csrf token or some other information which is stored at some other location in the website. So we know that we have accesses, which means we can execute a script, but inside the script we would want to execute a code which would go to some other location and fetch some information which would be needed for us to complete the POC or to complete the complete exploit, right? So in such times it's very useful if you can if you already have a parsed HTML, right? Otherwise you will have to write your own parser which would be complicated, because then you'll have to render the HTML as text and then write your own parser. That will be complicated. So if you want to directly use the DOM objects, which we have been using since the start, right, like this, document dot get element, document dot get ID, and all of that, right, whichever we have used till now. So if you want to use those DOM objects, right, if you want to use DOM basically in your exploit code, thereby preventing all the whole mess about writing a parser, then you have to use XHR, right. XHR basically stands for XML HTTP request, and XML HTTP request you can use to parse HTML, you can use it to parse JSON, you can use it to parse XML, right. There are some websites which render JSON, there are some websites which render HTML, and some XML. So you can use this XML HTTP request, you can use the various methods inside that to parse your required format. Now since I have the flexibility here just to show one of it, so probably I'll just show you guys the HTML parser, right. How do we use XHR with HTML parsing? Okay, so how do we do that? So I have our BWAP. I think you guys might know BWAP is very famous, a very vulnerable app using which you can learn the various vulnerabilities and become a better pen tester, right. So I'm going to use this to demo what I wanted to show you, right. So in this task, what we are trying to do is, so this particular, as you see on the screen, we have a page, and this page is vulnerable to accesses. Okay, so this page is vulnerable to accesses, which means we will create a script here. Let's open new tab, right. Okay, sorry, that was my atom. Let's new file. Okay, let's do a new file, and I have actually prepared the script here, so I'll just take you through it. I will not write it again. Let me paste the script here. Give me a second. Yeah, so this is my script. Let's probably save this as a JavaScript. Yeah, so this is my script. So what does the script do? Right, so we know that this page is vulnerable to accesses, and the task is, right, let's imagine, let's assume that you are here, you're on this page, and to build some exploit, and you know that this field is vulnerable to accesses. How do you know that? By running a simple script. You will understand that, right. Let's see if we can test that. There you go. Okay, sorry, this is the default page. Let me let me log into that, and let's go to accesses, the very simple accesses, which will be over here, right. Let's go there. Okay, now this page, the first name over here, now this is vulnerable to accesses, right. Let's run our simple script test here, right, and there you go, we got an alert, which means it is vulnerable to accesses. Now my requirement is that I'm building a very complex exploit, and I really need to traverse through this BWAP application, and let's say I have to go to a different page. This is a different page, and I have to extract all the links which are present on this page. There are many links on this page. So my condition or my task is basically I have to go to this page, extract all the links which are present here, and I have to type it over here in this page, and I have to do all of that just by using the accesses vulnerability which is present here. Can I do that? Yes. Now that's exactly what our XML HTTP request will help us to do, right. So we have you create, just like how we created a new object, we create a HTTP request, XML HTTP request over here, right, and we create the function, and inside the function we say that if the return status is 200, right, we we have to render the HTML page, right? So we do that, we get the HTML page, and what we are doing is we are getting all the elements which are, which have a tag, right, which have a tag. We get all the links in this way, right? And once we get all the links, we are basically printing the links back to this page. So let's go and check the element, right? So this element, as you can see, this element is basically called as main here. The ID is main. So let's change this to main, right? You will understand better once we finish the task completely. So maybe if you have any questions, you will get a better idea then, right? So yeah, that looks good. Now also, okay, so we also know that we need to fetch it from this page, right? So let's actually get it from this page. So this page, which is at this location, so let's change this. Okay, let's do a control Z, maybe not. Let's delete this, let's paste it here. Yeah, so we have it. Let's go through the task again. The task is to go to this page, get all the links which are here. So this is a different page. It is htmli dot get, right? So we go to this page, get all the links, and we are going to paste it, or we are going to write it onto this page, right? And the very important thing is, this is the code which you create, right? Where you go to the page, the response, you're going to render the response as a document, and you send the request, and then the function will take care of the rest, right? So what we'll do now, we'll take this entire code which we have written, and we know that this field is vulnerable to accesses. We're going to paste it over here, right? And this doesn't matter. Let's do this. There you go, we were successful. So what we did, these were all the links which were there on this page, right? It was on a different page, but we were able to fetch all of that and write it, or we were able to read and then write it back to the page which had the XSS vulnerability, right? This is a very simple demo, but then in most of the cases it might not be just the links which you'll be fetching. You might be extracting csrf tokens from a different page, you might be fetching form data and so on, and then using it in your exploit to show how dangerous your XSS can be, right? And also remember that what I showed you now is basically HTML parsing, right? I use HTTP request to just parse the HTML of the other page to fetch these links, but then you can also do slight changes and parse JSON data as well as XML parsing, right? So I think that is it. That is what I wanted to actually cover in this entire session. Hope it was useful. Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.